In today's video, we're going to be doing another step-by-step process, except this time with an original piece of artwork. Like I mentioned in the previous video, I do have a couple different processes on how I create artwork and how I approach it. This one is more of the typical way that I create artwork, and I wanted to kind of share the process and talk about how it comes to be. So once again, I've already sketched out the piece of artwork. I realized once the sketch was finished, I was like, oh man, this would be a dope video. And so here we are again, time-lapsing the sketch process of it. But what I want to talk about is where the idea came from. So initially, I wanted to draw a figure that was alone and almost like succumbing to the darkness. But I really wasn't sure exactly the pose that I wanted or even the concepts as a whole. I just had a kind of a nugget of an idea. And so what I typically do is I hop on TikTok or other social media platforms and just kind of look for inspiration. And a lot of the artwork I create is based off of a phrase, a string of words, a quote, something that kind of elicits some type of emotion. And if you know anything about my past, from 16 years old to about 23, 24, I was in the music industry. Nothing huge, I opened up for a couple large acts in the metal scene, but I've always been drawn to lyrics as I'm a huge Tool and a Perfect Circle fan, and it's just another art form that I've always been passionate about. So I find a lot of meaning and a lot of emotion in words. And I stumbled upon this quote. As soon as I read it, hit me with an idea. And so I wanted to create this figure that was kind of hunched over, scared, trying to make themselves as small as possible to avoid any more harm or damage. And the front arm initially was attached in my typical creepy pose, but with the concept of being harmed so much with no apologies, I wanted to show that damage physically. And so I had the arm kind of falling away and just visible scars. So with the brushes, I typically use 3 or 4. The first one is my main one, which is Jasinski ink, which is the standard brush I think that comes with Procreate. I have a couple little edits I have to where it comes out a little bit smoother. You can kind of toy with the streamlines to help you get those kind of smoother, nice crisper lines, but that's pretty much my go-to for main brushes. The next one I use a lot is the sharp nib on wand paper. Got it from a kit off of, I think, creativemarket.com, but it was the closest thing to simulate my old school ratty brushes with dried ink on them. The next one is the GVW Brushtober Blackmore Torn. This one just has a little bit of a chaos to it, a little grittiness to it. I use that one on occasion, not too often. And the last one is my LP Ascending Shader Dirty. I like this one because it's halftones that you can adjust the density of the halftone, and it's got that gritty look to it. Now we're starting to get into the actual nitty-gritty of the dirty ass ink. Now I always work on a separate layer because I fuck stuff up way too often, and so I don't want to have to ruin the lines that I've already been working on. So here I always start out, again, like with the face, always. Once I can get the face locked in, the emotion I want, it kind of helps me follow through with the rest of the piece. People have asked me why I draw the skulls in the front of the face, and honestly, it just kind of randomly happens. Apparently, my characters like to have their skulls outside of their face and not inside. I think it's just an easier way, kind of cooler way to make a shadow, as opposed to just having just a regular black spot there. When to add, a little bit more creepy features to it. Now I'm using my ink brush that I showed earlier, where it gives that really gritty, splattery, uncontrolled look. I used to use a paintbrush back in the day that I would dry ink in it intentionally, leave it overnight, and then cut off the bristles to kind of create this same textured kind of brush where I didn't really have control of what the ink would look like, and whatever it went down is what I had to use. bonuses of having Procreate is if I don't like it, I can just undo that shit and keep trying over and over again. And here, actually, this whole piece went pretty smoothly. Every line I put down, for the most part, I was happy with, except right there, of course, I said that and I undo it. So disregard that part. But a lot of this is kind of the blocking in that you hear a lot of artists talking about, usually with painting. I like to block in a lot of the shadows, because if you can get the shadows to look cool enough, the rest of the piece will kind of get tied in with it. Now, in terms of anatomy, you know, I have a basic understanding of anatomy, and if I need references, I just hop on Pinterest, hop on Google. There's Eighth Wonder having a huge giveaway. Check them out too, it's Friends brand. But I like having folds, I like having wrinkles, I like having dents inside the skin. It kind of just gives it a little bit more character, as opposed to just very smooth skin that you see in comic books. And so I'll just add these little gritty parts here and there. Happy little dark accidents, I guess. Now, other artists may not feel the same, but whenever I'm working on large pieces of a figure, like anatomy, like a thigh, I'm always like, how can I make this look cool without putting a bunch of like striations of the muscles? And mostly I just hide it in shadow, to be honest, completely honest. I take the Jonathan Weishak's approach, and if I'm not feeling comfortable with the anatomy, then I'll just put a lot of shadow there. Now here I'm just kind of filling it in, so again, still working on a separate layer, just kind of doodling here, noodling away. Again, probably one of my favorite parts is just adding all this in and just seeing it come to life. Like you can see with the shadows, it just kind of pops out a little bit more, has a little bit more dynamic feel to it. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I just love black and white so much that I'm just convincing myself that this is actually way cooler than it really is. Now, if you look at that Rob Liefeld level of foot right there, that's just what it is. Rob Liefeld has paved the way for us artists to not learn how to draw feet properly. But having a kind of unique style, minimalistic in a sense, I can kind of get away with drawing feet looking like weird pointy ass shoes. Or again, I'm just delusional. But I'm not learning how to draw feet. I've given my efforts. I've tried my best. They're coming in due time. Probably in about 20 more years, I'll have the feet down. And then I'll replace hands with feet. Now, as said in the beginning of the video, originally I had that hand almost 90-degree angle attached to the bicep. But it just didn't make any sense for the piece. And so I kept looking at it and kept thinking about what the piece was supposed to symbolize. And obviously it's the all of the damage taken over time. And so I wanted to have this disconnected from the body. And you can see the red lines of like where I had ideas of where to put some of this, the other piercings and I guess, I don't know really what I'd call those, giant thorns. Just big ass lines. Big lines I didn't feel like actually putting any detail into. These videos are gonna out me really. You're just gonna find out I'm just a lazy ass artist and I just hide everything in shadow. And yet some people just keep trying to copy the artwork. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they think it's so easy to do, and it really is. And they're just like, oh, I can make a career off of just copying this easy ass artist's work. They're not too far off, to be honest. So here, yep, just, again, noodling in my line work. Just what I do. A lot of people got a kick out of my bed of lines comment. A lot of the times when I'm doing these videos, I don't think about what I'm saying. I'm really just off the cuff. I don't like rehearsing things. I don't like having a script. You can always tell if I'm reading off a script because I sound so uncomfortable. I'd rather just have stuff pop in my head the way it does with artwork. And so if I come up with a weird ass thing to say, then fuck it, there it is. And this here was completely not intentional. I really liked the way the teeth looked. So I was like, I'm keeping it. Now for the bed of lines. I sped this process up. Actually, no, I didn't. I'm actually doing this in real time. I'm just this fucking fast at Linework. I wanted to kind of speed up the process just because it takes so long to do this. And I kind of zone out when I'm doing the lines. I just kind of think lightly about where the shadows are going to be. And it's really amazing on how much line work like this will just add more to the character. Like, it just gives a little bit more texture to it. And sometimes I will just go just nuts with it. I'll just fill every line and crevice I possibly can with the lines. But this time I kind of reeled it back a little bit. You know, kind of had some white space in there. But it's still a lot of fun. You know, working digitally makes it a little bit easier. But when I was doing this traditionally, it would just take me weeks and weeks and weeks. And I'm not getting any younger. So had to streamline this shit a little bit more. All you young people out there can keep up with doing traditional line work. I gotta use the cheat sheets like Procreate. And here we're getting towards the finishing touches, adding in the little spikes, thorns, weird black lights coming out. I don't know, whatever the fuck you want to call them. Add some little stringiness here, little dangliness, tendons. Let it know that, you know, we're on our last strand. Add a little white, little details here and there. And then the final part is just writing out the phrase, which is, I hope you heal from all the apologies you never got. From all the things no one ever apologized for. I don't even remember. I'm tired. Here we are. I hope you enjoy it. It was a lot of fun. Sorry it's taking so long to get this video out, but I'm thinking about this stuff on the fly. But if you like it, drop some comments below. If you made it this far, congrats.